It's funny. People always be like, don't forget about the little people. It's like, why do they refer themselves as little anyway, you know? Why don't you just get big with me? Feel me? They can see it in my eyes.
McDonald's didn't start because they wanted to make $1 million. They started because they wanted to offer a quality product at a premium price to the everyday person. Now McDonald's like kind of still does that, but it's more like, how can we pump out bullshit at the lowest cost to us? So I mean, it's like eventually, I mean, and what they keep kind of coming back to is it's like money is the root of all evil. I mean, everyone will agree with that.
Did you see The Founder, the McDonald's movie?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't seen it.
God, it was a great movie because he just seemed. I mean, Ray Kroc was this milkshake salesman, right? He sold milkshake dispensers, and he got hooked up with the actual owners of McDonald's, and he eventually took it over. He became partners, and then he essentially, I don't want to say he swindled, but he kind of, when he franchised and did everything, he kind of took it from him, and then it was just interesting to see, like, he kind of was this down on your luck kind of guy, and you were rooting for him, and then he along the line, it was money got in the way, and it did something to his brain, and he just became a prick, and he just screwed over a lot of people in the process. Like, he divorced his wife. He's like, well, I've grown past you, and it's over. And you're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
It was great. You should get it if you get a chance to see it. Watch it, and Michael Keaton does a great job with it.
Oh, so, that was the thing he was in?
Yeah.
Okay, I've heard about that.
Unfortunate story. And I'm sure, Ray Kroc, I'm sure he did great things, Ronald McDonald House and all the money that he contributes. But it's just such a weird dichotomy of, like, good and evil at the same time.
It's but no, like, it's been interesting kind of, like, listening to a bunch of different podcasts, and I think the thing that has drawn me to doing a podcast is the fact that I enjoy talking, first and foremost. But I think it's a thing that is gone now. Like, the only time really you ever see people talking to one another, and it's kind of hit or miss. And it's one of the reasons I love Mulligan's, is because it's basically a black hole for cell phone reception. Like, you go there, you pretty much can't get cell phone reception in there for shit.
Why do you think that is?
Because it's a brick building, and it's a bunch of, it's...
Bunker?
Yeah, I guess. Which kind of sucks when you're getting an Uber, because you gotta go outside, and you're like, I don't know if I got one, and there's been times, like, where it's like, here now, and you're like, oh shit, I gotta close out my tab. Because you didn't think it went through. Right. But I do enjoy the fact that Mulligan seems to be one of the few places when I go there, I don't see people on their phones. Like, people are playing pool, they're sitting there, like, at a small, like island type table off the wall, like sitting across from each other, hanging out. Or you'll see people and be like, "Yo, hold on a minute, I gotta go see my friend over there." It feels like and granted, I'm only 33, but like I feel like I'm the last generation of people who like remembers playing outside and like doing shit before phones. Like, I remember getting a phone after I'd already graduated high school and being like, okay, like, you can barely use this because like it doesn't have great reception and it costs a fuckload of money to use it. And just being like, oh, okay, this thing. And just going and playing with somebody, or like going to hang out with someone and just hanging out all day, watching movies, talking, bullshitting, whatever. And I don't feel like people do that now. And I'm just as guilty about being on my phone as everybody else. But I think the difference is, some people could say like whatever you're looking up is horseshit. It's not relevant for the most part. But like, I remember my wife getting on me about how I was on the phone during a long trip, and she was like, "You're always on your phone." I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry." I was like on this tangent of like, I was thinking to myself, I wonder if bees sleep, because we have like big bumblebees in the end of our driveway in the telephone pole. And so I was just like thinking, I was like, oh, I wonder if they sleep, or if they like what they do at night, or whatever. Because I was thinking about spraying the hive or whatever. Sure. So I was trying to figure out if there was a good time to go do it. And then she was like, oh, well, what did you find? I was like, well, apparently they don't sleep, but they go into like a almost dormant state. Yeah, and they're still moving, but not a whole lot. Like, that's as close to sleep as they get. And she was like, oh. So, I mean, like, I'm that guy who will, like, get, like, the dumb thing in my head, and I just go, huh. And then I, like, am looking, and then it's like, okay, like, is this, again, back to what I was saying earlier, it's like, is this bullshit? Let me look up a couple other sites and see what's going on with it.
Go to the Googleator and figure it out.
So, but, no, it's been kind of funny, like, in prepping for this, I've been listening to a bunch of your podcasts.
All worthless.
Well, what's interesting, though, is, like, because, like, you went skydiving recently.
Yeah. Oh,
and
boy.
the interesting thing about that is, like, I've always wanted to go skydiving, but I'm, like, terrified of heights.
Yeah.
And I've always said, and I wouldn't have the same issue as you did, having, like, someone completely, like, smaller than me strapped to me. But I've always said, like, the only way I would do it is, like, I'd have to have, like, earplugs in, and then just, like, be strapped to the dude already. Be like, don't fucking say, like, oh, in 3 seconds we're going. It's just, like, fucking open the door and go. And then I'm strapped to you, and it's like, oh, okay, here we go.
Yeah, I wish it was that way. Sure. Because too much for me, it was too much like I'm processing
Yeah.
everything, and I'm staring out the window and I'm looking at it, and I had the harness on, but then we had to attach each other once we got in because the plane's so small. And pre jump, I thought the plane was going to be big enough that we get to like a door and we're standing and then we just jump.
Yeah.
And it's more we were just sitting, and then all of a sudden I have to force my legs out the door, and so my feet are dangling. And then all of a sudden he's like, "All right, on the count of 3," and we're just kind of like rocking, and then we just fall, and it was very weird. And would I do it again? No, I don't think I would do it again. But I'm glad I did it. I would encourage you to go do it.
I can think of other things I could do with $300.
Yes, right. And that was the thing too. When the guy was telling me, he's like, "You ready to have some fun?" Like I've never thought skydiving, jumping out of a plane would be fun. It's just not fun. It's a challenge, and it's adrenaline producing, but it's not fun.
The whole thing.
This is more fun to me.
I was gonna say, as you kept going on, and he was like, "Oh, is this fun?" I'm like, I can think of a lot of other things other than like, there's a reason your body tells you not to do this.
Yeah, this is stupid. This is dumb.
And then it's like, and then it's like, I think like the alternative would, and it's not the same, and I know this, it would be like just get one of those like wind tunnel things and do that, and it's like, all right, I got the experience.
That would be cool. I think
that'd be a lot better.
Because that was the best part for me, was kind of like the falling part.
Yeah,
was the best part, because it's weird. Like you just felt weightless.
Yeah.
And I mean,
you probably can't describe it unless you're doing it.
Yeah. The wind's coming at us, and I think there was a moment where I wasn't falling correctly because.
I understood that, but when you said that, I just laughed. And I was like, Lord knows you can't fall correctly out of a plane.
Because we were barrel rolling for a second, like because we were like going end over end sort of, and we weren't supposed to do that because I wasn't reaching out or arching my back enough. And so once we did that, then it was fine. But yeah, it was very good. And like he didn't give me, there was no equipment. I didn't have a helmet on. I didn't have a
That seems weird to me too.
Yeah, because I at least thought he would have given me a helmet. Right?
Yeah.
But thinking like I hit my head like coming out of the plane when we're falling, or like even in my brain too, I'm like, what if we hit like a bird, like a duck or a goose or flying?
I mean, happened to Fabio.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking about Fabio on the
roller coaster,
getting splashed by a goose, breaking his nose.
I actually just saw something, and I don't know if this is fake, but it reminded me of the Fabio thing. Surprisingly, apparently a roller coaster hit a deer.
What?
And just coated everyone in the first like couple rows of blood. Yeah. And I was like, I don't know if that's fake or not, but that's like kind of awesome and kind of like terrifying at the same time.
I can't imagine being one of those people.
Have you seen, I mean, living in Michigan, I'm sure you've seen a deer get hit by a semi.
Yeah.
So I mean, like,
splatter,
so I mean, it's like, I assume it's going to be like the same thing.
Yeah.
But like the scary thing is like, at least a semi, like the person's pretty high up and obstructed. Like those people are basically
you're just open.
Yeah, to get hit by whatever comes flying too.
Do you think it was like a wooden roller coaster?
No, it looked like from the video, like from the thing, and I don't know like if it's one of those things where it's like, oh, here's like, but you know, like growing up on the East Coast, like I'm from Delaware, so it's like going to like Busch Gardens and shit was always a thing we did like after school, like at the end of the year. And you know, they got some of those coasters that go pretty low to the ground, like on the tracks in the area they're in. So it's like I could totally. I don't know how a deer would get in there, but I mean, we've all seen animals get in places they're not supposed to be.
Weird things have happened.
So it's like, who's to say like a deer couldn't get on one of those like low track things and kind of try to jump over it, not knowing what it is, and then just, you know, one of the like freak nature things where it's like it just happened to be coming right as that was going, and that happened, and it's like, yeah. But I thought of the Fabio thing because I was like, man, who would ever think to get hit in the face by a bird on a roller coaster? So it could happen, I guess, if you're
when you're parachuting.
Yeah.
I asked the guy too, because I guess it's his job. I was like, is this what you do? And he had like 3 other jumps that day, and then I guess I did it on a Friday, and then he said on Saturday there were like 40
something. Yeah.
And it just made me go like. And I can't imagine it's him doing all of the jumps.
Well, I was going to say, how long was it from leaving the... I don't even... You said it wasn't a tarmac, but yeah. Like
taking off on and maybe 20, 25 minutes from we're taking off to we're landing with the parachute.
Well, there's no way it's doing him, because even just doing the quick math, even if you cut that in half, that's already like... So 20 times... Because it would be 2 for an hour.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're already at, like, 10 hours right there just of 20 people.
But it made me think, like, he was jumping out of a plane, like, even if he just did it 10 times.
Yeah.
I felt just so worn out from one. And I know, I mean, it was my first one ever, and I'm sure this guy, obviously, he's certified and he's a pro. But I can't imagine what he feels like at the end of the day after jumping out just like 10 times.
I
what
feel
does
like
that do to you? Like,
well, okay, so here's
organs.
It's funny you bring that up because I was thinking the same thing myself when listening to you talk about that, and something that I thought was interesting. So one of my first jobs ever was working at Deja Vu down in Kalamazoo. And I started off as the door guy and then eventually worked my way up to bartender, filling your pop.
Yeah, all right.
So now being 18, like pretty newly 18 and going and working at a place like that, a lot of people are like, oh, it must be the best job ever.
Sure.
And it's like, okay, like, and eventually it becomes the shitty thing where, like, everyone's like, this must be the best job ever. I'm like, do you have a girlfriend? They're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, so do you like it when she bitches all day? And they're like, no. And I was like, now multiply that by, like, 20 or 30.
Right.
That's pretty much what it is. Like, the cool parts don't really outweigh the shitty parts. Because, or even think of your job where someone's, like, always, like, kind of bitching about something, but now it's make it, you know, even more. And then, like, you get, you know, rude people in all the time. And it kind of sucks. But the takeaway for me, which was kind of interesting, and I actually looked at it as a valuable lesson, was it taught me, it kind of desensitized me to nudity.
Sure.
That was interesting, and kind of looking back at a later age, it's like, you know, when I started getting more into, like, dating and, you know, so forth, it's like, the whole, like, oh, I want to see you naked, like, that kind of went away. So it's like when you're just on a date or whatever, you're like, oh, I'm just kind of enjoy talking to this person.
Right.
The flip side to it, too, is it really did show me that there are all different kinds of women are beautiful in their own way. Like, you could have a tall girl, a big girl, a short girl, whatever. Like, there's something attractive about everybody. And a lot of people aren't going to probably walk away with those same things that I took away from it. But I definitely think, looking back, like, that's what it taught me. Like, it kind of gave me a different life set of skills that, like, the average person probably doesn't have.
It's healthier.
I feel like it is, maybe, because I don't know, but then, like, I've had people tell me that, like, that I'm over-sexualized because of it, and maybe, like, that's, like, something like that could cause, like, sexual deviances and stuff like that, and I was like, okay, sure, I guess, like, anything could cause anyone to do anything, really, like, if you're going to use that set of rules. But what was interesting to me about thinking about that, sort of applying it to that dude, is it's like, okay, like, we were just saying, like, how jumping out of a plane is not a normal thing. Like, there's your internal, everything's telling you, like, don't do this. This is something could go wrong. You could die. At what point if you do that so often that you just kind of shut that off? Like, does that have a weird effect on someone? Maybe, like, where it's like, okay, like, you're not really meant to, like, just do this all the time. Like, if there's a negative repercussion of it somewhere, whether it be, you know, the altitude stuff. Like you said, you weren't wearing a helmet, and I think you said you had goggles, but
yeah.
Okay,
goggles,
so I mean, it's like, okay, like, if you're just going in shorts and whatever, like, is the air pressure and all that stuff that you're constantly putting your body through on a day-to-day basis for, you know, 10, 20 jumps a day for 6 months or whatever, like, what does that do to you?
Yeah, he was wearing earplugs.
Okay.
So I think he knew enough, like, the plane
but he didn't offer you any.
No,
fuck your ears.
No, he was like, fuck this guy. So he knew. And yeah, I don't know. It almost makes me wonder. I'm almost hesitant about it because if you become that comfortable with it, you almost take things for granted.
Yes.
And then I'm like, okay, like, legitimately for me, it's like, I need to interview you.
Yeah.
You're the guy in charge, but how are you doing today?
Yeah.
Right? Like, are you feeling okay? Have you packed this shoot okay? Like,
yeah,
this is going to go. And there's always two. There's, like, a backup shoot and whatever.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
But you're still just like, man, this is such a goofy thing. And I wanted to look at, like, who was the first person to, like, decide to jump out of a plane, right? Like, I think, wasn't it, like, Da Vinci, or it was some inventor like that created some sort of parachute or whatever to jump out of, like, hot air balloons?
Well, I was going to say, I feel like maybe it would even be like the Wright brothers out of necessity of, you know, trying to get their early aviation stuff going, like a fail-safe if, like, oh, shit, this didn't work.
That's funny. But people have now been sending me awful videos of jumps.
No.
Like, someone sent me one of, like, a guy who he had a seizure on the jump, and it was like him and they were each doing individually, so it wasn't tandem, so it was like two dudes. but the one dude had a seizure. Like you saw him, he like seized up, and so the other guy had to like shoot down and dive, and he pulled the ripcord for the guy, and then he pulled his own, and you never saw the guy land, like the video.
But even on top of that, like if that dude's seizuring, like you were saying, like you can't. There's a certain way you gotta land. You can't just like land.
Right.
So it's like if that dude's seizing up, it's like okay, like.
Yeah, it made me wonder, like, if he broke some bones when he landed.
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
If he hadn't snapped out of the seizure by the time it was time for him to land.
Now it makes me wonder if it was the altitude or something that got to him and like triggered something.
Yeah, it just made me think like.
I'm never doing that.
Well, yeah. Well, it made me go like, I'm surprised that they would let like an epileptic or whatever like do it on their own. Like you would think it'd almost have to be like a tandem. You know.
Yeah.
Just. You know,
but I mean,
like they don't allow people who have seizures to drive. They're not legally supposed to drive. So.
Yeah.
Someone sent me another one. A guy who did a, what is it called? Like, not a land jump, but he jumped off like a very high tower.
Yeah. And, freebase jumping.
Yeah, freebase. He did one of those.
It's weird that the same thing to use to talk about drugs is what you do when you're jumping off of a tall building.
You probably need it. Well, this guy, his chute opened, but it didn't really do anything for him.
Oh, I think I've seen that.
He did it in winter time, and there was a lot of snow, and you just see him like land, and you're like going, "Oh, that dude is dead. He's dead." But other people said, like, I guess maybe there was continuation of the video or news from it, but apparently he lived because there was so much snow beneath this tower that he jumped from. But I'm still like going, yeah, but he's got to be fucked up. This guy's legs and internal organs have just been turned to mush.
For what?
Yeah, and I'm not that adrenaline guy. I don't have a need to drive 200 miles an hour or whatever. You know, it's just, so I'm really surprised that I even jumped out of the plane. So whatever.
But it's been kind of interesting to catch up on your life, and something that I think has been kind of interesting and I feel like parallels to. I mean, as we're sitting in my office, like you can see that I'm pretty big into music, and between shows that like this wall is all shows that I pretty much have done and booked, and all of this is like shows I've been to and so forth.
So you have is that kind of like a side life of yours? Is just like booking shows?
It was the problem, and I'm sure you can agree to this or attest to this with local comedy even. Mm-hmm. There gets to a point where whether it be a national bands actually are usually pretty. Surprisingly, a lot easier to work with than local bands, and I don't know if it's just because like it's their day to day. They know what they're doing. They get in and get out, and they just fucking they're be as easy as possible, and everything will be good. But I got tired of dealing with local egos. Kind of have like realized like how similar comedy is to bands, because I mean it's like you guys travel, like you went to Ann Arbor, you did a house show. That's a very band thing to do.
Yes.
It's a very band thing to do, and I actually kind of was like, oh man, that'd be like, because you were like, oh, someone was like, oh, we should start like a house show scene here, and I was like, I would do it. Like I've had bands play in my house. Like I had 100, like last house show I did earlier this year, 130 paid people at like $10 a pop.
Here?
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
So
did you get like noise ordinance problems? Or
I've
anything?
never had a noise ordinance problem. It, like surprisingly, my basement keeps sounding really well.
You can fit how many people down there?
We fit 130 paid people plus the 3 bands. So about 3 or 4 people each, and then like my wife and I and a few of our friends who were here. So I mean, you figured probably about 150 people total.
What's it do with parking?
Got the school. It was during the summer, so like no one was there.
Okay,
yeah. So and a bunch of people carpooled and stuff like that. Like it was pretty good. I can show you footage when we're all done with this.
Yeah,
it's pretty wild.
Yeah, that's great.
But it was one of those things where
was it worth the band's while?
Yes, because like you know they were making the comment, and I had said this too to the people that I didn't book the show, like I basically housed it. But something,
were the venue.
Yes. But something I had made the comment to them, I was like, you know what sucks is like this is a great turnout at $10. Like everyone's happy. Yeah. It's like the band didn't ask for like a huge guarantee, but it was like the beginning of like their farewell tour basically. And so I was like, the sad thing is, it's a Saturday. This show's going on. I go, but I don't think if this was at like Pyramid Scheme or the Stash, you wouldn't have even gotten half of this to come out. And it's not because the band isn't good or the local support isn't good. it's just kind of solely because some people are like, oh, I don't want to go to that venue. I don't want to pay this. And it gets weird. And I don't understand it. But it's like, as soon as like you put someone in a different kind of environment, all of a sudden now it's like, it's almost like that freak show nature where it's like, well, I want to go see this because like, well, that's crazy. Like when you were talking about the house show thing for your comedy, I was like, I think that'd be cool because instead of like how you were saying, like it was only like 15, 20 people, but they were attentive, they were appreciative, I think that those 20 will get more out of what was going on that night than maybe 300 people at like Dr. Grin's.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I mean, it's like,
it's much more intimate, and
it's quality over quantity.
And right. And
yeah.
I 100% agree with that. And there's always that weird thing of like, all right, maybe there's going to be someone on the show who eventually is going to do something. So it's got that niche stuff. It's very homey, and the guy who ran it is very accommodating. He's good with the people. He's good with the acts. It's a weird thing, though, of like, because all the performers love it, and I loved it too. But I'm not bragging, but it's just the reality of it. I was much farther ahead than everyone else there, kind of like career-wise.
Sure.
Like I was the one guy who actually is kind of a professional, and I get paid to do stuff, and then I just can't see myself doing like a tour of house shows because there's not that guarantee of money, and then where am I going to stay, and then you got to think about travel and food and all that stuff. And it's cool, and it's like it's that adventurer's heart kind of thing of like, this is awesome. But then you get to a point in your life and your career, and you're like, this isn't doing shit for me.
So it's not. See, I feel like, and that's kind of like. I feel like the parallel between being a comedian and being a band person, I mean, I feel like when you're coming up, you want to play everywhere and anywhere.
Yes.
To get the experience, to get better, so you don't suck.
Yes.
But then, I don't know if the same thing, and I would assume it does, because you're just very much like a band playing the same 5 songs you got. Right. You're telling the same 5-8 minutes worth of your jokes that... Yes. Once after the first time of hearing them, it's like, I've heard your beaker joke many a time. But the flip side of that is, I know as an MC, not everybody who's in that room has seen you as much as I have, especially when they're giving comp tickets and so on and so forth. So in that regard, it's not quite the same, because that joke maybe for 90% of that room the first time they hear it, and it gets that first laugh that is probably the icebreaker for, okay, I'm laughing and I'm at ease.
And there is stuff with that where I tell guys too of like they're tired of their jokes, and I'm like, so much of comedy is just acting, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to act. This is the first time I've ever said this, and your energy has to be high, or at least it has to be appropriate to what the joke is.
Yeah.
And because I agree with you. Like comedy is weird in the sense of like, and I've always it's been like Def Leppard, right? Def Leppard can get on stage and play Pour Some Sugar on Me, and everyone go fucking nuts, even though that song's 30 plus years old or whatever, right? It's hard for me. I can't get on stage and tell a joke like the Beaker joke, which I haven't done in a super long time.
I haven't seen it in a while, though, to be fair.
But it's I can't get on stage and keep doing that and generally in front of the same people and then expecting them to like kill every time. Because it's not. Because like you said, it's like, all right, I've heard you say it. It's a funny joke, but the response isn't going to be the same as if I had said "Pour some sugar on me." So I always try to write new jokes, and I have this shtick in my act now where I take out my notebook and hey everybody, I got some new jokes I got to work on. Do you care if I do it? And then they're all stupid one-liners that don't fit anywhere, but I try them out, and people like them. People like they're dick jokes. Whatever, people love dick jokes. Yeah. So it's weird. Comedy is very similar to music in the bands, and it's that whole indie scene.
Yep.
And it's pushing yourself and promoting yourself, and because I tell new guys too, no one's going to work as hard for you as you, and no one's going to want to work for you until they think they can make money from you.
Oh, yeah.
And then at that stage of the game, it's almost like, I don't fucking need you.
Yeah.
It's a catch-22 thing going on there.
The weird thing that you brought up that really started solidifying my parallels between the two worlds, because, I mean, as much as I love comedy, like, growing up as and the funny thing is, I always say as an 80s kid, like, I was born in 84, so it's like, and I have a pretty good memory of a lot of earlier things, but a lot of people would be like, oh, you're a 90s kid, and it's like, but the weird thing is like, I remember, the Rodney Dangerfield specials, the young comedian specials, and seeing like a young, like, like a Ray Romano, who I didn't think was funny back then.
Sure.
And seeing like Jerry Seinfeld and seeing, like one of my favorite two, I remember at a very young age, or 3 even, was like Bobcat Goldthwait.
Yeah.
And I remember a lot of, like, I realized there was something different about him. He wasn't for everybody, and to me, I kind of like that. Sam Kinison, because he was just loud and boisterous and fucking wild, and I love that.
Awesome.
And Andrew Dice Clay, like, that was like my parents' favorite comedian. Like, I remember when they went to Philly to go see him, and my dad, growing up big in music, is always like, let's get the best seats, good vantage points, all that kind of stuff. Has always been that guy. And I remember being aware enough that he would do that, having not really been to, I don't think, any shows really. But I was like, didn't really understand comedy, because like at that point all I was seeing was like Dice playing arenas, and it's like, that's to me what I thought comedy was. And you're seeing like Kinison play like these large like theaters and such, and it's like, so to me, I never saw comedy in a small room presented that way at a young age. So I always thought comedy was this thing where it's on the level of rock stars.
Right.
And back in the 80s and such, it was.
Eddie
Some
Murphy.
people got to that. Yeah, Eddie Murphy Raw, like Prior, Here and Now. That's one of my favorite stand-up specials.
Harlan.
And it was weird because, like, I remember my parents going, and my dad was like, I was like, oh, where'd you guys sit? Because I used to think, like, when you saw the special, like, that's what they, like, literally that's what they saw. And to a degree, it is. And they're like, oh, we were, like, not pretty far back, but, like, a decent, out of, like, basically Dice's viewpoint. And I was like, why? And they're like, and then my mom was like, oh, your dad was afraid he was going to see me, and then be like, yo, whip out your tits, blah, blah, blah. Just kind of, like, be Dice. And I was like, oh, that's funny.
That's funny.
But it's weird now because, like, we've gone to, like, those Sunday night open micers and stuff like that, and gone to some of that, and, like, going to Dr. Grins and seeing a lot more, like, lower-tiered national acts and so forth, to where you see, like, you and Garrett and Deggy and, everybody else, and it's kind of like I'm seeing comedy, like I saw it like at this unattainable thing, like, oh my god, this is what comedy is for a lot of people, because at that point, like, there's the comedy boom. And so to see where it is now and seeing a lot of people like doing clubs and so forth, and kind of getting to people like Marin and a lot of these like, alternative acts and stuff like that, and seeing like people who are playing coffee shops and so forth, it's like, as I kind of started getting more into bands and music and stuff, and kind of going to like church halls and VFWs and not typical places for bands to be, and now kind of seeing the flip side of that for comedians, it's like, okay, like there are so many parallels between the two, plus the traveling to basically make nothing because you're trying to make your name. But to bring it back to the thing that really solidified that parallel for me was when you were like, so I was trying to like get like contact some people and be like, yo, who are you, like, can I get a show, can I get on this show, like, what are you doing, fill my calendar. And someone's like, oh, well, I heard you're working with so and so, and it's like, Jesus Christ, that shit happens in the comedian world too. Like, why the fuck does it matter who I'm working with? Like, I'm trying to just, like, bands do show trades all the fucking time. Like, why can't it be like that? Like, and it's like, okay, so like, you're doing your thing. Okay, I get it. Like, cool. Well, how about this? Don't be a dick, and maybe I'll help you come up here.
It's very territorial,
and that's so weird.
There's a booking agency in the Midwest, there's a booking agency in the Southeast, there's one kind of like in the Northwest of the country, and they all have like, this is my territory, don't fucking cross my territory. And sometimes these bookers will try to start rooms in other people's areas, and then people get like, you can't fucking work that room, like that room's 30 minutes away from my room.
So, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
So I know in the booking world of music, there's a thing called a radius clause. And that's why, for some people who don't know this, like, if X band is playing for us, Detroit, or an even better example, really, to kind of show it on a broader scale. So a traveling festival, like Rock on the Range, that's a big destination festival. And I know that they put a radius clause on the days, like so many days before, you can't be in this range of the radius of the festival. And you also can't play within so many miles of this festival. Otherwise, you're basically going to be taken off. And so a lot of people are always like, well, why the fuck aren't you playing here or here or here? And it's like, well, there's the radius clause, so I can't. I wonder if that would help. Like, if someone were to just kind of, like a booking agent were to start being like, you can play that venue, however, you can't come back here with me for 30 days or for blank amount of time.
I've heard about that in comedy, and I'm assuming it does exist for bigger name acts.
Okay.
no one's ever come at me with that, because I'm a low-level headliner. I'm the feature act. I'm the middle. That's who I am. And no one should give a fuck about me, right? You give a fuck about the guys who have pull.
Yeah.
Right? Those are the guys, like guys who are coming to see whoever. That's the guy you should be like, well, you're going to play my club. Like if you look at a bigger city like Cleveland, Cleveland's got like 3 clubs in the city. And you can't have the only for whatever reason the comic came into my brain first was this guy Earthquake. You can't have Earthquake go play Hilarities one night and then he's at the Improv the next night and then or weekend and then the third weekend he's at the next one, right? Like no club would be cool with that,
right?
And but no one should really give a fuck about what Stu McCallister's doing. No one is coming to any show to see me. And if they were coming to see me, then clubs need to recognize that Stu McCallister is a fucking draw of some kind, right?
Does that not happen? Like, if a local opener were to sell 150 tickets for a national room,
it definitely helps.
Does that parallel into the comedian world as well? Like, if you were to bring some people out, you advertise really good and stuff like that. Does that get you more gigs, or does it not really apply?
I've never had success with it.
Okay.
I've personally, like, whenever I go to play a room, like, I will, do all the social media stuff that I can. I've bought Facebook ads in the past too, and I've tried to reach out to clubs and go, hey, if I do this, if people mention my name at the door, can it be like buy one get one? And I've never, and again, because of where I'm at in the comedy world, if I'm the middle guy mostly, a lot of the clubs just kind of overlook me and overlook my requests. Even though I'm doing what I can, like I know like 5 people who live in Louisville, Kentucky, so I'm not a draw. But I'm going to do what I can to get people to come out and see me at the club there. Cause
better than some touring bands who have never been there and expect more.
You got to do what you can because the next time I go back there, I want to be the guy, right? I want to be the guy closing the show. I don't want to be the middle guy. But you look at someone like the guy who's coming to town. He's in town tonight, more or less. Doug Stanhope. He's playing Muskegon tonight. I think he's playing Kalamazoo tomorrow.
What the fuck is he playing in Muskegon?
He's playing this bowling alley. He's playing the back alley.
Oh wait, alley. I saw a friend of mine actually bought tickets to that, and I was like, when I looked it up, I was like, I think it was like $20 a ticket. I was like, $20 to see someone at a bowling alley? But then it's almost like the basement show thing, where it's like, I kind of would go just to see what kind of a fucking freak show
this is. It's a side
is.
room. I've played it. It's a side room of a it's the banquet hall or whatever.
Yeah,
it's a side, and it's nice enough. But and then he's doing Flint and Kalamazoo and Lansing and Grand Rapids. He's doing all these places that are all within
an hour.
Yeah, hour. Or if you go from Muskegon to Flint, or even Muskegon to Detroit, that's like 3 tops.
Yeah,
and he's playing them all because he's fucking Doug Stanhope.
Yeah,
and he's setting it all up on his own. And people are always like, "Why is he playing that shithole?" He's playing that shithole because he knows he can get 100 people paying $20 a pop to come out, and he's getting all the money.
Right.
It's all comes down to economics, and he's the guy that everyone should aspire to be. I would love to be Doug Stanhope, where I can just go and I can play a bowling alley and get that kind of money.
The fucked up thing though is sometimes I feel like this with bands too though, is you see someone like that and everyone just shit talks it, but they're not paying attention, like you just said, the business side of it. But the flip side of that even is, to me, yeah, you're oversaturating a market, a territory, but then you're not coming back for a while, so are you really? Yes, you're playing a lot of places that aren't very far away, but at the same time, half of the places you just mentioned, people aren't going to fucking travel.
Yeah.
Not even 20 minutes. Oh, I have to go somewhere and do something? No.
What? And he has his fans, like Joe Rogan has his fans, Stanhope has his fans. And I think I'm 100% sure that there are going to be several people who will see
go to
him
each
in
one.
Muskegon, they'll see him in Kalamazoo, they'll see him in Grand Rapids, just to see. I mean, he's working out. He did a radio interview yesterday, and I heard it. And he's working out new stuff. And he even said, he's like, I can go to these shithole towns and work out new shit, and it doesn't matter if I eat it because it's fucking Muskegon. I'm playing a bowling alley in Muskegon. No one cares.
Yeah.
But I'll have it tight by the time I go to Detroit and I'm playing like a theater there.
Right.
So.
And I think people don't understand that either sometimes about comedy. Like, I was watching, and it's funny because you were talking about, like, there's so many specials. Are they special anymore? Yeah. I just finished the Kevin Hart special from last year. With the one where he...
Good?
Was it any good, or is he any good?
Is it? I don't know. Did you like it?
There was something that I enjoy about Kevin Hart that didn't work for me on this special.
Okay.
He's really good at doing callbacks, setting them up real early, and then hitting the mark later on. Like, so the running, so one of the running gags that he had was, he was like, oh, you ever notice that, like, black women, when you tell them something, have this, like, this look on their face, like, they don't believe you, and they'll be like, oh, is that what happened? Really? Right. But the audience, and they'd always pan to someone in the audience, usually like a section of women, doing the really thing, so it's like, it caught on, but it's like, it was where the Eagles play. Oh. And so it was sold out. Damn. He sold it out. Yeah. And it was like literally the biggest comedy show that's ever taken place. Yeah.
And comedy is not meant to be.
No, there were a couple of times like where he would say something and you just hear it echo, and I'm like, because I've heard people. I think Marin was talking about how hard it is to do comedy in theater sometimes, because like it takes sound to get somewhere, and you can't tell how you're doing or if the joke's landing, and there's this weird delay. So I can only imagine, Kevin probably at that point you're just. Here's my fucking hour or hour and a half, and then I'm just rolling through, and if it lands, it lands, and we'll go from there. But the problem that I had with it was, like, the callbacks weren't as funny as they used to be. I like the fact that he still tries to be as down-to-earth and everyday man, like, real shit that's happening to him in his life, but it's still somewhat... Like, because he always goes, oh, everything's based out of reality. Mm-hmm. But then it's like, some of the things you're talking about, it's like, yeah, I kind of agree with that, but I don't know, it's not, it doesn't relate to me.
It's not hitting anymore, huh?
So, I don't know.
He's another guy who I think there's definitely pressure on him of, like, this guy needs to have, like, a new hour or whatever. And it's hard for him, because that dude
Well, now it's also, like, it's not just an hour. Yeah, it's not just an hour, though. Like, a special, it's a fucking movie you have to, like, put in the theaters and have people... like, be about, like, I remember going to see the last special he did, like, when he was going, like, the whole hour special was about his divorce, basically. Right. And my wife and I were the only ones in the theater on, like, a Saturday afternoon, and I was just like, I don't know if this is, like, because it's not good, or because people just don't want to watch a comedy special in a theater.
In a theater. Like, it's weird. It's weird that they do that. I mean, good on him. I mean, Kevin Hart is one of the most successful comedians out there currently. He doesn't do it for me, but
no,
good for him, right? It's hard for me to shit talk a lot of guys. Like, there's a lot of guys I just don't like.
I like the fact that he at least tries to be positive and put a positive message out there, as opposed to others.
Right. So props to him on that, and he's got a lot of people in his corner, and he's got this new. Kevin Hart from the city or something. He was just in Detroit and tagged a bunch of Detroit guys to come out and do the show, and good on him.
It's funny, one of the podcasts I listen to is a dude from a band that's been a band for like 20, 25 years now. Uh-huh. And something he often talks about is the people who are at his level or have, like the Def Leppards or whatever, that they need to co-sign younger bands that they're into and kind of usher in the next generation of bands or whatever. Speaking of the Kevin Hart thing of bringing like a handful of people out, do you see a lot of that in comedy, or is it like a lot of things like, oh, I came up with you, so like you and I are gonna get together and we're gonna go do this thing, we're gonna kill it together and fuck everybody else?
I think there's that. There's definitely guys like you see it more like at the superstar level of like what's her face, Amy Schumer. A lot of the people who are in her movies and stuff, not everything. It's she isn't for me either, but I mean,
Sarah Silverman did it first and did a little bit better in my opinion, or any of the other female comics that came before.
So a lot of the actors and actresses who've been in her movies are still great, like Bridget Everett. I don't know if you know Bridget or not.
Name sounds familiar.
She came and did Laugh Fest 2 years ago, and I was fortunate enough to open for her, and she's just fucking phenomenal. Bridget Everett. She's not the typical stand-up. She's more like a cabaret singer. Okay. And she's just singing dirty songs. And she's walking out in the crowd, and she's flashing people her tits. It is amazing. So if you ever get a chance to see Bridget Everett, go see Bridget Everett. And everyone shits on Adam Sandler, but Adam Sandler does the same thing too. He does stuff with his buddies of like David Spade, and Nick Swardson has kind of replaced Rob Schneider.
I've heard Schneider and Spade are kind of assholes from people who have hung out with them around here, and I was just like, that sucks.
Yeah. I never want to hear about my heroes in comedy, because when I do hear about them, more often than not, they turn into their dicks or something, and you're just like, I don't want to hear that. I just don't want to hear that. So, but I think I try to do it when I'm on the road, and if I have the ability to take someone with me, I'll just grab people Because I'd like to work with people that I know and people that I can have a good time with, as opposed to like I just show up. I'm in Dayton, Ohio, and I don't know who the fuck I'm working with. So why wouldn't I try to take someone if I could?
Do you something that Marion was actually talking about recently with, I don't remember who the comedian was. Mm-hmm. They were talking about how lonely it is on the road.
Yeah, it's awful. I tell guys, I'm like, if you are not comfortable being alone, comedy's gonna be very tough for you, because you're traveling more often than not by yourself. You're in a city where you probably don't know anybody, or if you do know people, it's the people who work at the club. You're staying in a hotel. You're only there like 3-4 days. It's kind of quick in and out. And a lot of people ask me if it's like a vacation. I'm like, usually not. I just don't have the time, because I'm always supposed to be working on stuff. I got to be my podcast, and I'm working on sketches, and I'm writing this and that, and I'm writing a new hour or whatever, and there's no time. And then you got to go do the shows.
And those are late.
And then and those run late. And then sometimes you got to do media, so then you got to get up early in the morning and you go do media. And it's just very difficult. And I've only flown once to gigs. I travel most of the time.
The funny thing about potentially that gig you're talking about, and I was going to bring this up, if it's the Vegas gig, okay, my wife was on that flight with you.
Yeah, it was such a long time ago. I remember that.
Because when we went out to Vegas to get married, and the time before, like a couple months before that, she was like, I think the last time I went to Vegas, like we ran into Stu McCallister. We didn't know he was going to Vegas until he was getting on the flight back, and we're like, well, what were you doing here? And he's like, I was performing.
Yeah. It's very weird. Grand Rapids is a small town.
Yes.
How did you end up getting a job at Deja Vu? You're 18.
Yeah, I was working as a dishwasher at a like cafe diner in Parchment, where where we were living.
Yeah.
And I was just like looking for a job that paid better and got me out of there. And then like some friends, like who had a car, because it was like, still like just out of high school, you hang out with your friends, someone's got a car, you all go, blah, blah, blah. Right. So like one day they were like, we're going to go shoot guns and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I don't really want to shoot guns, but okay, like I'll just hang out with my friends. And we were supposed to have like a big sleepover and watch like horror movies and shit.
Right.
And then it turned into like one of the stops we made was at Deja Vu.
Yeah,
and I was like, I don't really want to be here. This is like not my idea of fun. Is like looking at half naked girls or fully naked girls with 3 or 4 other dudes sitting right next to me. It's like, guys, want to go jerk off in the bathroom together?
Boner City.
So I remember sitting there and then just kind of over the whole thing, and like I was more paying attention to just like the hustling nature of women and how like the club would like squeeze all the money they could out of you.
Right.
And like perfect example, like a friend of mine. Like, because they have, like, non-alcoholic drinks because they can't serve alcohol.
Yeah.
So we just hear blabbering because there's loud music and all this kind of shit. And then we're like, what the fuck did you just order? He's like, I think I ordered something called a Nevea? And we're like, what's in it? I don't know. The girl asked me if I wanted to get one. And I was like, all right.
You're hot.
And then I just remember, like, this girl came and sat next to him, and then the drink came, and she started drinking it. And then we're like, where's your drink? Because, like, all he had was, like, pop. And we're like,
she's drinking it.
Oh, no. Her name was Nevea. He bought a drink for her.
Nice.
And then he was like, oh. And then I was like, oh. Now this makes sense to me. Like, okay. And so there's just like a lot of that shit going on, and then finally I was like, they had like a fucking like now hiring thing that I think was always there, but I was just like, got an application?
Sure.
Because I don't not spending any money here, but I might as well like just like more as a goof. Really, I was like, let's see if I can get this.
Right. And then
they called me back like a day later,
right?
And they're like, hey, can you come in tomorrow for an interview? And I was like, yeah. And then it's like, since I had not really ever been on many interviews, like they say dress for the job you want. It's like, how do you dress for a job at a strip club?
Right, yeah.
Breakaway pants. And, no, so I went and did that. Like, I did the interview. Like, they're like, all right, well, start. Like, when can you start? And I was like, well, I still have a job, and I think I'm supposed to put in 2 weeks. Right. I was like, I don't give a fuck. It's a dishwashing job. I'm sure eventually, like, it'll be not on my resume, so I don't... Right. I could probably start, like, in a week.
Right. And
then started doing that, and I was there for about a year and a half, and I was doing pretty good, and there was definitely some sketchy sides to that place, and
Sure.
I definitely learned how to hustle people out of their money. Like, but the weird thing to me is, like, I remember back then we weren't allowed to tell anyone when anyone was going to be there. Like, if someone called like, "Hey, is Phoenix there tonight?" "Oh, I'm sorry, can't tell you." Now they fucking post people's
of, like, stalking reasons.
that was part of it. But the other part that was kind of explained to me was that you want them to pay to get in to find out that she's not there.
Oh, right.
But the weird thing is now you go to different places or on their websites and they'll just tell you who's working. And to me, it's like the flip side. So the stalker can now know your schedule and know that you're going to be there. You know, with social media being a thing, I see, like, there's a stripper out of Portland that, like, a bunch of comedians follow and would, like, have funny banter with. So I thought she was a comedian.
Right.
And then found out she was a stripper.
Right.
And I was like, huh. I was like, oh, whatever. She's fucking funny. And, like, a lot of times she'll talk, like... And I was actually going to have her do a podcast with me because she had gotten to the point where she was dating Tim Meadows.
What?
And they went out, like, on a...
I'm sure she was funnier than Tim.
Yeah. So she didn't put him on blast until, like, he basically just dipped on her and, like, didn't return calls. Like, they went on, like, a, like, Caribbean, like, vacation or shit and, like, blah, blah, blah. And I guess he was, like, just kind of an asshole about how it all ended. And what was interesting to me was that she ended up on Wendy Williams.
What?
Because, like, she was putting Tim on blast, like... You know, because everyone's like, oh, well, you're just a fucking gold digger, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, look at these fucking text messages he's sending me about, like, how he loves me and all this kind of shit. And then it's like, she ends up on Wendy Williams, and she's like, she's just another one of those, like, you know, white girls trying to just, like, take our men and blah, 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 blah. And then, like, just turned into this thing where I was like, what the fuck? And, you know, she'll post something about, like, you know, political stuff that, you know, she's like, well, if you think this, blah, 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 and, like, provides facts and shit. And then it just turns into this thing where it's like, shut up and just you're a stripper, you don't know anything, or just show me your tits. And it's like, you know, that's how fucking frustrating must it be when it's like you're more than this thing that people, you know, associate you with. It doesn't help, you know, your profession, but people should be able to look past that.
You'd like to think, but people won't. People
you would like to think, but people won't. But I find it very interesting that she's kind of had a few of these kind of scenarios happen to her over the last, you know, handful of years, and it just always turns into this thing like she's trying to have an honest dialogue with people and try to spark conversation, and it just goes to the lowest common denominator. Granted, it's on Twitter or whatever, so I mean, that's not surprising, but it's still frustrating to see shit like that. Just like I feel like this is better, but we're already an hour and 20 minutes in.
Holy shit! You would have crushed any of my podcast time limits.
Oh, this is par for the course for me.
I love the tangents, whatever direction the conversation's going, and you go with it.
I think it's funny you like tangents, but you keep yours to 15 minutes.
Again, because that's for me, it's the time limit thing of like, well, I have more I can talk about, but let's just keep it to this. So that's just my own thing. I think maybe if I could have a co-host that I could regularly do things with, that I knew that we could do it together, I would probably go a little bit longer.
Should get Garrett. I mean, that dude.
Yeah, I just don't.
Actually,
think...
didn't he? Wasn't he sort of started it?
Yep, he was like the first co-host that I had. He lived with me for a while, and he kind of like he edited and he did some stuff for the podcast. But it would be difficult for me to do things with him too, because his schedule is different than mine, and we just don't gel. And I wouldn't be opposed to having him back on again.
He's got his own that he does
sporadically.
Yeah,
the Carrot podcast, and he's doing some music, and he's the host now of Dr. Grins, and so he's got a lot on his plate as well, and the day job too. So it would just be hard to do it. So I just like, and that's why I like doing it on my own, because I can just, all right, I know I'm going to do it on Mondays, and I know I'm going to do it on Thursday, and then I'm going to take a half hour out of my day, and I'm just going to do this, and here we go. And if people listen, they listen. If they don't, they don't. Whatever, you know.
I always think it's funny you say, like, to my 6 listeners, and now it's up to 10.
Yeah. Yeah, I got the double digits, man. I don't mean to brag, but... Yeah.
I think the crazier thing about doing this is, like, seeing sometimes, like, how far someone away from you has listened to something, and you're just like, holy shit. Yeah. I don't know if it's that way for you, since you kind of keep yours more locally themed.
Yeah.
But it's always been kind of interesting, like, oh, someone from, like, Africa listen to
Wow.
this, and you're just like, holy shit,
That's amazing.
I'm never gonna go there.
It makes you wonder how they found you, right?
No, I totally know anybody who listens to my shit is because they found through the guest.
Okay.
I've started getting better at using, like, I call them hashtags, but like the search stuff.
Yeah.
And then I'm very much on top of my stats and my analyticals. Like, I was looking at my YouTube stuff, and it's like, okay, the average person watches for 13 minutes, and this is, you know, like, and then you even have a breakdown of, like, someone found this video because of the suggested video by searching one of the things you use, blah, 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 just random happenstance. Right. And so it's like, all right. And I try to make sense of all that as much as I can, but a lot of times it's like, no one fucking...
Sometimes I feel it's just lightning in the bottle, man.
Like, I've always said, like,
know.
the nice thing about podcasting, like, the thing that doesn't get me down, I mean, like, at this point, you're 120...
24, I think.
24? Okay. I thought it was like 127. I thought you're close to 130, though, is the point.
Yep.
But, you know, you're already over 100 episodes in, and I just started... I was checking it out in the beginning, like, when I think you were in the first, like, 15.
Yeah.
But it's like, at that point, like, I didn't have a job, really, that would let me listen to it, and it's like, you're busy doing your own shit, but it's like... Now I'm able to go into it, and I have like 100 and some odd episodes I can just go back through.
They're all garbage, don't
So
bother.
the interesting thing is like I feel like that's typically what happens for everybody. Is like there's that one guest that like is the launching point for the entryway for a lot of people, and then all of a sudden they're gonna be like, "What? I like that. Holy fuck! There's like 200 episodes. All right, here's my new thing. I'm gonna start back like binging on because we're in a binge society." And
True.
So I think that's the kind of thing I keep reminding myself when I'm in this like dungeon back here by myself, like talking to the wall and doing intros and so forth, and being like, why do I spend so much time?
Because you enjoy it.
I do. I definitely get like,
you
I'm
enjoy
like,
it.
I just want to get to the point where like the nominal amount of money it costs me to do this, which isn't much. Like I've been thinking about hitting up a sponsor and being like, give me like, okay, so if my costs are like $20, be like, give me 10.
Sure.
So therefore, half my costs are gone.
Right.
I'll plug your product. I'll put your fucking photo thing on shit.
Yeah.
That's a win-win for me.
Right.
And so, like, I'm just looking at ways to almost get this to where it's like it's breaking even.
Yes.
And I think that's an interesting thing that this could be something where it's like even if you make nominal amount of money, it's like, oh, interesting.
Have you thought of, what is it, the Patreon or Patreon? Or...
To me, I'm of two minds about it because there are a lot of podcasts I'll ask you this: Do you listen to a lot of podcasts as it is?
Not many.
Okay.
I wish I did. I just
do you
don't.
judge the podcast as much as I do?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes I feel like they're overly produced.
Yes.
And that's part of why I like mine. It's just like, it's me and that's it. I don't edit it. I don't add anything to it. It's shit. Enjoy it.
If you go through like the first couple of episodes of mine, I was very much the same thing. I was like, I'm never editing anything. I'm just gonna fucking upload this, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
Then I did an interview with someone, and there was about 25 minutes of like and ums and like
Sure.
and uhs that I took out because I was like, this makes it so much longer, and it's really annoying.
But I think then that makes you a better interviewer or interviewee.
I think I've gotten better.
That. Yes.
And I've also become a lot more aware of if I'm going to talk over someone, I always go, sorry to cut you off. And I remember I kind of put a pin there and I go, okay. Because a lot of times when you come back to whatever it is and someone's like, I don't remember where we were. We were here. And then it's like worst case, like I can say my thing. And when you're trying to do all that, I can edit that out. So I don't sound like quite the asshole. But yeah, I find that I speak a lot better now as a result of listening to myself. Like I think it was Chris Hardwick was saying, sometimes the thing that people are so afraid of is dead air because they don't want to be perceived as being stupid because they can't just come up with something. But a lot of times all you end up doing at that point is saying stuff that doesn't mean anything, and it's just filler until your brain catches up to wherever it is you're going. So actually by stopping, you can actually think clearer and then say what you're trying to say. So it's interesting to listen to a lot of different podcasts and kind of get different information out of them. I definitely think what's been interesting for this and listening to yours is like, I like that yours is just sweet, compact, in, out, you're done. I think on average, like if I like toward the end of my day from like my last break, like I got about like an hour and a half and I can probably plow through about like 10 episodes and get through. It's weird because it goes in reverse order, just the way the player works.
Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting because it's like, oh, this was going on. Okay, yeah. And like, we were listening to it last night while we were cooking dinner, and Bridget, like, you were bringing up the Charlottesville stuff. And Bridget's like, what the fuck is going on with it? I was like, why don't you shut up and listen? Yeah. And he'll probably explain a little bit about what's going on. And
I talked more about it today just because of I had some Facebook posts that got some weird reactions on it, and it isn't generally anything. I don't like talking about stuff like that. Like it.
But I feel. I'm sorry to cut you off. Do you
right.
feel that as a podcaster, or even as a comedian, do you feel like you should bring up these things and make people aware of the fact that we can't just turn a blind eye and sweep shit under the rug and be like, I don't want to see, like, because like something that as a byproduct of living in this social media society we have and clickbaity shit, I tend to find that we can make our world, our online world, be exactly how we want it to be. I don't want to hear anything like that, so I'm not going to follow those things. I'll block those things. Yeah. Oh, I don't agree with you. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you off and tell you everything how I feel. Block you after I've sent it so you can't even rebuttal.
Right.
And it goes back to what I was saying, where I feel like the thing I like about this is I can have a conversation with somebody.
Yeah.
Or listening to them, I can sit in on a conversation and get some different perspective other than my own. Granted, a lot of the shit going on right now is not... Again, just be a good fucking person and have some like common sense. And...
I think we often get stuck in the echo chamber of everyone that either follow us or likes us on Facebook or Twitter or whatever probably has the same thought process as you. So I can say stuff and everyone's like, oh my God, you're right. And then you do have that one person who's like, you're a fucking moron, Stu. And then I have to deal with them or respond to them or whatever. And there is a guy on my page who is politically completely opposite of me, and he's always got shit to say, and I just don't want to hear it, like I get it, I get where he's at, and I know this is where you're thinking, but man, the Charlottesville stuff, I just Nazis, man, there's nothing you can say to defend Nazis, and I talked about freedom of speech today too, and I just it's an unpopular thing to say. I don't believe in freedom of speech.
As a concept or in the practice of it?
In the practice of it. I believe in the concept of it, of everyone should be allowed to say what they should want to, but there are consequences for what you say. And then I don't believe that someone can be out on the street saying, fucking kill all the Jews, right? Like, I just don't believe it. There should be a level of civility, and we don't allow for hate speech, and I'm not about it. I know because a lot of people bring up the whole freedom of speech shit, and I'm just like, no, no, sorry, no, right? Like you don't want me in front of your house going fuck all you fucking queers or whatever.
Right.
Get the hell off my sidewalk, man. Right.
Right.
Like, what are you doing? So, yeah, that's weird. I get what they're doing. I wish those people would be more productive with their time, though. Like, I wish they were, like, if they were so concerned about children, I wish they would volunteer their time in, like, schools, or they were foster parents, or if they were concerned about women, maybe work at, like, a battered women's shelter, or, stuff of that nature. To me, it's that time better suited as opposed to being on the sidewalk. And a lot of those people are, like, they're praying, and, like, you can pray anywhere in the world, man. You don't have to be on the sidewalk to pray, right?
I've often wondered with what you do for your actual, like where you came from your professional life to sort of, I don't know exactly what you do now. I know you work at a hospital. But
I don't do much at the hospital. I'm just kind of there, getting in the way.
But it's one of those, like, I wonder how much of, well, I don't really need to wonder because, I mean, it's what shapes everybody. Like, your day-to-day and your life experiences are what shapes you, obviously. Yeah. But I wonder how much of what you have gone through in your professional life, being a social worker and working for, like, CPA or CPS?
CPS.
Okay. Yeah. Has given you a completely different perspective than the average person will have. Probably. And therefore gives you more, because you see the other side of it, see all the negative downfalls of, like, a lot of this shit, and it's like, okay, like, people with welfare. A lot of people fucking hate on it.
Right.
But I'm sure you've seen the good it can do.
Yeah. Oh,
But I'm sure on the flip side of that, you've seen all the terrible shit that everyone else bitches about.
Yeah.
But I think if more people were to see the good it can do, I think maybe they wouldn't be so quick to be like, fucking take it away.
Right. I don't understand, like, what people think we should do then, right? Like, the system is flawed completely, but what are we going to do? We're going to let kids starve? We're going to let these parents not have heat in their house? I mean, it's like, we got to do, we're supposed to be, like, the whole thing you start off talking about, like, being Christians and religious and being good people. Like, this is part of the process.
Yeah. And it's like, I can imagine only so much of that. And like any job where it's shitty like that, it's like, it's not the person, it's the things that are in place that make the determination for them to kind of lessen it on their end. So it's not like, oh, it's you, Stu McCallister, you told me I can only get $13. Well, fuck you. But that's how we take it. And I can only imagine, like, dealing with that for as long as you did. It's like, you want to talk about the skydiving, dude? Like, what does he do when he comes home? It's like, how do you see all that shit that you would see every day? And how do you come home? And then how do you try to go somewhere on, like, the weekends and try to be funny for people? Because I feel like that'd be the last thing I would want to do.
It was very soul-crushing. I heard of instances, it never happened to me, of when I was at Child Protective Services, of investigators bumping into people they either were or had investigated at, like, Meyer or whatever, and then that person essentially, like, heckling or causing disruptions in the store to the point where the person would have to leave. And to me, that just boggles my mind that would happen. But
what do you mean?
They would just be like, "What you doing here, bitch?" or stuff like that. "You can't take my kids." And
like they would run into them in happenstance
in the community.
Gotcha.
Like at Meyer. And
okay.
And these people would create a ruckus. And I never wanted to take a kid ever, but I wanted to make sure the kid was safe.
I can't imagine, like, even remotely, like the only thing I can even think of, and it's not anywhere near the magnitude of that, is, like, you're bad. If you don't do this, I'm going to take this away from you. Like, as a parent to a child. Yeah. I can't imagine coming in as someone that's not even associated with the family, like, in any birth, like, blood relatives or anything like that, and just being like, if you don't do X, I'm taking your child away because you're not providing the basic care for the, you know... How do you make someone who doesn't give a shit give a shit?
Right.
And then it's like when you put it beyond that onto how do you make someone give a shit about another person's life that can't take care of themselves? Like, that should just be inherently, like, a thing you do.
You would think, right? This is your child and this is what you need to do. That's the frustration with the system. The system is 100% flawed. I won't disagree with that.
If you see shit like that, though, I always constantly wonder, it's like, if you left that and see how flawed that is, and then you just take it to, like, the even bigger scale of, like, then how is the fucking government supposed to work?
Right. Yeah, you just look at, like, government contracts, and I just look at the military. That's got to be so fucked up. There's so much money involved with that. So do what you like, man. That's all I'm trying to do right now. Do what you like. Don't do the things that you don't like, or minimize them as much as possible, So
are you still doing comedy? Because the Ann Arbor trip sounds like you are, but then every couple episodes you're like, I'm done.
Well, I'm done in the sense that working the road is not high priority for me. Like, I'll still work the road. Like, I had a guy asked me today if I'd work in Louisville with him in November, and I'm free that November, and so I'm like, yeah, I'll go do it. But I'm not going out of my way to search out gigs. The road wasn't working for me. I wasn't enjoying it, and it really struck me probably about a year and a half ago when I went down to Myrtle Beach and I worked the club there.
Was it off season? Because that's really depressing when you're there.
You know, it's weird. Myrtle Beach is one of those towns where I think it's a little different. Like, when it is summer, it's not the time of year to go. But if you go in the winter, no, it's reversed. I was there at a time when it wasn't the best ever, and it just made me, it's like, I don't know, 13, 14, 15-hour drive, whatever.
Oh, you drove it.
I just drove it.
I was gonna say, if you go off season, the flights, like, we got a round trip flight for like $100.
Damn,
it was cheap as shit.
Maybe I should have, but it just made me go, what the fuck am I doing here? This is not. It's not what I want. Like, I enjoy performing and everything, but I just don't want to do what is currently happening. So I'm just trying to reevaluate and focus more on the podcast, focus more on writing, and then not feeling like I need to take every gig. And if it means I need to have the day job that I do, then there we go. So I'm just trying to be happier with it all.
I imagine there's a lot of soul searching going on a lot of these trips.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because again, it's the whole like I drove all that time by myself. They had a condo down there, and I'm sharing a room with a guy that I don't really know. I'm at a club where I don't know anybody. I'm in a town where I don't know anybody, and I had been there before, so I kind of knew some stuff. But it's still just kind of like, God damn it, you know? It's not fun.
Right.
In Myrtle Beach, as you said, it's a touristy town. So you have all these people kind of come in, and it's just a weird, eclectic group of people. Doesn't make any sense. It's just weird. It's just weird.
But you're still involved with Laugh Fest.
Yeah,
so you still do that.
Yep, still involved with that. Still involved with the Tonight with Andy Bledsoe show, which I enjoy writing for, the talk show, and
still doing stuff with Eric Zane as a contributor.
Still contributing to Eric Zane, and hopefully I can hop more on. But sadly, his show is not getting the ratings that it would want. So I mean, what are you gonna do?
The last thing I'll bring up, and then I'll let you go because we're at an hour and 40
Holy
minutes.
Holy fuck!
That's
what
like
time
seven of your podcasts.
Holy shit! Yes. Okay.
So we'll wrap it up with this.
Thanks.
So you go to a lot of shows.
Comedy wise?
I don't know if you go to a lot of comedy, but
I do.
You support a lot of the arts. We'll say.
Yes, I try to.
In a day and age where a lot of people can't be bothered to even leave their house, very much like you were saying, because of like everything comes to us. We have music on our phones, so we don't buy music, or Netflix, and can see whatever you want. Or I'm not going to go to a theater to go see a movie because it'll be on DVD or on my phone in a month and a half.
But I love going to a movie theater.
I know you do. I was going to say, you always talk about it.
At least once a week.
Yeah.
At least once a week.
But you spend a lot of time trying to be engaged in going to the movies, or going to see bands if you can, or going to support just local stuff here around. Sure. I often wonder, is it a byproduct of the age you are? Or because being a content creator, whether it be for your comedy, for your podcast, or whatever, are you doing it more in search of being able to talk about the experiences, or just genuinely because you enjoy the escape of all of that, like going to see a movie, getting lost for an hour or two, or going to see a band and being like, man, I remember when this song came out and it transports me, and just that communal vibe that you get when you go into a show. Like, that's one of the many reasons I love going to shows, is being able to look around and just see like everyone reacting to the same thing I'm reacting to, and being like, wow, this is awesome. That's why I love putting on shows, like being able to be like, I fucking brought this to people and people are having fun. Like, I love this band. Now, hopefully, like, the room of these people will be like, that band was awesome. I'm going to go buy their CD or shirt or whatever. And that's the other side, too, of... I love the fact that you're always like, I went to go buy a shirt. Like, people don't do that. It's like, they do one... like, well, I came, I bought my ticket.
Right.
I supported enough. And it's
I think it's because I understand that, too, of, like, I love it when people come and they see my show and then they want to buy one of my shirts. Because I get, like... oh, God, I generally sell shirts for $20 a pop because I just have to economically. It just makes sense for $20. And at a show once, a girl asked me, she's like, how much are the shirts? And I said $20. And she laughed in my face like I was a fucking lunatic. And I'm like, you don't have to buy the shirt, but this is what I need to sell a shirt for, right? Like, I'm not going to sell it for 10 because I'm not making dick. And I'm not going to sell it for 15 because I'm not dealing with fives. But if I sell a shirt for 20, and it's just, I know it sounds stupid, but
no, that's what I do for a job, is I make shirts.
The reality of it. So I'm selling for 20, and it's like, and I get it, and it's like, and I tell people, like, this is so I can eat, and this is so I can buy gas, and this is to like get me to the next spot, and that's what it is. So if I go to a show, and a good portion of the time I do get into this stuff for free. Yeah. And so if I can buy something for someone, I'm like, hey, I'm supporting you in whatever capacity. So I love it, man. I'll do whatever I can. Like when I saw that guy,
Steve Elroy Meltzer.
He was only selling for $10 a pop too.
Well, again, we work at a place where we just pay our costs and shit. So.
I get it, but I was like, Jesus, dude, I would have bought it for 20 if he had my size.
Right.
But so yeah, it's all of the above. I go for the experience. I go because then it does give me stuff to talk about for content for the podcast, And it's stuff like, just for me, it just creates memories. And it's like I'm out and about, and again, I don't know if it's I'm old or not. I do have Netflix, and I think I watch way too much shit on Netflix as it is.
Sounds like you watch documentaries though a lot.
Yeah, I do try to watch stuff that's important, maybe, or educational in some capacity. Just trying to be better if I can. I don't know if it's possible, but and I like doing weird stuff because Grand Rapids, it has that awful reputation being bland rapids and
does
whatever.
It really?
Yeah,
I've never heard of that.
I hear too much goddamn time of it. It's bland rapids, but I think that's like older people who live there for a long time. And they think like there's just not stuff out to do, and I'm like, so there's stuff like there's that Ghost Walk tour that I had bought tickets to go to, but then I unfortunately am an idiot and realized they had a show and I couldn't go to, but I want to go do that too. Like I just think that would be interesting to do. Like walk
probably
around
learn
Grand
history
Rapids.
about our town.
Yeah, you're gonna learn some stuff, and like my friend Jamie went and she did it, and she was like, oh yeah, this it was great, and she actually they sold the book, and so she bought the book. And I'm like, why wouldn't I go? This is something like I didn't know what was going on, but through Facebook, somehow I found it. So I'm like, go and support. Go to like Dog Story Theater or come to Dr. Grin's or God, I need to get a hold of the guy. There used to be this guy who would do like a moth thing. Are you familiar with a moth? The Moth is like a storytelling series.
Okay.
And he used to do it over at the Speakeasy. And he would do it like once a month on like a Wednesday.
Oh, never mind. I was thinking where you. Okay, yeah.
I think it's over off of.
Yep. No, I know. Yeah. Yep.
And then once a month they would do this moth series, and it's essentially like, okay, this month's topic is we're talking about picnics, and then everyone would come on stage, and then they would tell like up to a 6-minute story of like picnics, or they went with their parents and they did this or that or whatever, and it's just that's weird shit. Right? That's just weird, and these are like people who they're not professional speakers. Right. They aren't necessarily meant to be funny. It can go in any kind of direction.
Sharing common experiences.
It is weird, and it was very cool for me to go and watch. And then I did a couple because I knew the guy who was running it, but I think he moved to Chicago, and I think that's why it hasn't been happening. But
Look it up.
He asked Adam. Do you know Adam? Adam Johnson, redheaded guy, beard.
Name sounds familiar.
It was interesting, and there's other stuff happening over at Stella's.
Yep, the Drunken Retort.
The Drunken Retort, and there's just which unfortunately I've never been to.
I haven't either, but I've heard good things. I'm friends with some of those dudes, some of those people.
And it's just the Fuse Box. That's another one where these ladies are trying to do like some improv and sketch, and I haven't been over there, but I know they do some stuff at the at Dog Story. So there's shit going on in this town.
I was gonna say there's even comedy. I think on Wednesday nights at Mulligan's, I think improv.
They do some like friends and family improv or something
like that. Yeah,
and they do the comedy at Tip Top Lounge on Tuesday, and they got the Holiday Bar on Mondays. So there's stuff in this town, and so I just try to do as much as I can. I don't like staying at home. It's weird because I'm not a people person. People can go fuck themselves usually, but I like to be out if I can. Just like when I went to that stupid that food truck rally.
That sounded awesome.
It was great. Yeah, it was cool.
It's weird venue choice, but
it was a weird venue choice at the Speedway, and I wish they did everything on the track. I wish
weird.
They had done everything on like the
lawn where it's not hot as balls.
Well, not hot as balls, and everything is like together because like we did a fucking like 2 laps.
Yeah, because you said it was like 40 something.
85.
Jesus Christ.
It was like 85 food trucks is what they said. I don't know if they were all there, but so we had to do like 2 laps. And then we had to go. There were a couple like in the infield, but if they were all in the infield, it would have made it easier. But
yeah,
just go and do weird shit, right? As opposed to like I'm gonna stay at home and I want to watch fucking whatever on TV, right?
Yeah.
So whatever. Yeah. I'm too goddamn old.
So I guess the wrapping point is to get out of your house, go experience life.
Yeah.
People are assholes.
People are assholes. And challenge yourself. Jump out of an airplane. Don't be a dick.
I think that's a good place to wrap. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, John.
Where can people find you?
They can go to StuMcCallister.com, at Stu McCallister on Twitter and Instagram, and like Stu McCallister 1 on the fan page. But
Stu McCallister 1?
Yeah, because it's
because someone had it.
Because I'm Stu McCallister,
right?
And then for the fan page, I had to make it Stu McCallister 1. And if people want to friend me, Although I do have a thing of like 12 people sitting on this friend request stuff.
Well, yeah, because you brought up a good point of how you do that, where it's like, if I can't write on your wall, if I can't see shit, I'm just going to fucking get rid of you.
Yes, I get rid of you. If I can't write on your wall, I'm going to get rid of you. Yeah, too much social media, but whatever.
And then your podcast is?
Jesus, you're right. LMNO Podcast. Everybody go check that out on SoundCloud, iTunes, and CastBox. You should put yours on CastBox too.
I will look into that. All right. Well, it was great talking to you. Thank you for your time.
Yeah,
and
thanks, Sean. It was good.
Hopefully we can bullshit eventually again.
Whatever you want, man.
All right.
Thanks.
So that was my conversation with Stu McCallister. We're going to keep this outro pretty quick since the whole interview as a whole kind of ran kind of long. If you would like to follow Stu McCallister, you can do such very simply from his website over at StuMcCallister.com. If you would like to follow his podcast page, you can do such on Facebook at LMNO Podcast. If you would like to follow Stu McCallister, you can do such at Stu McCallister. That's all one word, StuMcCallister. And if you can follow Stu McCallister's podcast, the LMNO Podcast, once again, over on SoundCloud or on Castbox, which I still don't have one. If you would like to follow me and give me some love on my socials, you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at John's Untitled Podcast. Tweet at me at John's Untitled Pod, or if you would like to email me, do such at johnsuntitledpod@gmail.com. Kind of had to rack my brain a little bit for this one for a song to play this episode out to. Typically, I like to do something that's kind of more in line with the guest. I didn't really want to pull a comedy thing because it's kind of hard to do just a little bit. So I think I decided to grab a song from someone that we talked about, who is one of my coworkers, Elroy Meltzer. And I didn't really know which song to grab, so I just kind of randomly grabbed something that sounded good off of YouTube. And it was his song for Swans, which was a live recording from the WYCE radio station here in town for Local Spins, which is a online music website type thing that I contribute for as far as writing for reviews of shows and features on bands and so forth. So it kind of felt a little all-encompassing to keep it a little more locally themed, putting the local spin on it as it were. So without further ado, this is Elroy Meltzer with Swans, and I will talk to you next week. Thanks for listening.
I'll show you some doors, so many doors with many steps, an execution knife. Well, I tried my hand in love before. I'll show you some scars, well, so many scars, yeah, not stitched up yet. Snafu, fluff, or a slip. Oh, come on, who cares about two swans on a lake, necking and floating? Still, I wish for moonlights and trysts, my own china cupboard. necking and floating. Still I wish for moonlights and drifts, my own china cover. Well, who cares? Yeah, about two swans on a lake, necking and floating. Still I wish for moonlights and drifts, my own china cupboard.